I have been focused, both academically and personally, on the lives of girls and women for the better part of 3 decades. The reason that I am focused upon it is because it is important to empower girls to participate in the larger venues of society. If we are to teach girls to be deliberate and to be afraid of nothing, we must empower them. When I think about solutions to the problems of girls and women in this society, I think of empowerment. And when I think of empowerment, I think that there are women who are empowered who display 2 particular facts of life, 2 particular characteristics. The first is that they are relentlessly intelligent. The second is that they are fearless. And if we are to teach girls to be fearless in this society, we must teach them about the larger oppressions of it. Now, this is a seismic shift. It means that we go from teaching girls to be empowered individually to thinking about how the larger oppressions of society affect them. In order to do that, there is this term, intersectionality. It's a concept, it's a large concept developed by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, who is a law professor. Dr. Crenshaw talks about a comprehensive way that we can examine the lives of girls and women in any given society. What she says is that there are various social factors that impact our identity. No one factor can affect any one of our identities. So what she suggests is that we look at larger social factors and intersect them, such as race, social class, gender, disability, sexual orientation. Now, this is a large concept. It is far too large for me to discuss in the time that I have here today. So rather than talking about the concept itself, what I'd like to do is prompt you to intersectional thinking. So today what I am going to do is I am going to talk about 3 major factors that impact the lives of girls and women that could actually present an opportunity for us to empower them in intersectional ways. I'm going to talk about media, sex education, and race. Now, let's start with media. When I think about media, I think about a 5-year-old girl asking her mother, "Mommy, does this make me look fat?" This is a feature of American life, and it is heartbreaking. Many women first blame themselves. Well, maybe she heard me say that. But then generally what we do is we go to media. We blame media. But media only reflects the values of our society and regurgitates them back to us in an infinite loop. So if we are to allow our daughters to partake in media, we must participate in media with them. So what we see in media, we ourselves create, which means that yes, you created the Kardashians. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. But what it also means is that parents must be vigilant about the images that their children see, particularly that their daughters see. Research indicates that when parents allow their children to watch television, films, etc., but they create a running dialogue with them, that those children internalize the messages sent to them by their parents more than they internalize the messages that are sent by the forms of media. So the idea in the empowerment of girls is that let them watch, but make sure that they understand what your value structures are so that they then can break those patterns. Why would she treat her best friend like that? Would you lie to your parents like that? Oh, wow, she's got great style. By doing this, we allow girls to see the broader negative images that are inherent in media, but we also empower them to reject those images. When I think about empowerment of girls, I think about sex and sex education. Now, stay with me for a second because I know that you're wondering how you get from media to sex. So just hold on. I'm going to take you through it. When I think about sex and sex education for girls, I think about the movie Twilight, New Moon. And I think about the time when I went to go see it in the theater and I saw a mother take her 6-year-old daughter into the movie theater. She couldn't have been any more than 6. And when I thought about what she was doing, I thought about the plot line of the movie. A primary feature of the plot line is abstinence until marriage. For those of you who don't know, the entire series, Twilight series, is focused upon the chaste romantic triangle of 2 young men and 1 young woman. The 2 young men, one is a pasty, sparkly, 100-plus-year-old vampire, and the other is he's a Native American Indian with a heaving chest. I don't know how you get that, but anyway. And then the girl is a smart, dull, preternaturally clumsy young woman. So I'm sure that what the mother was trying to do was empower her daughter, was trying to give her some personal power, right? Trying to help her to understand that she could say no to sex, that she had the individual power to remain chaste until marriage. But here's the problem with that. The idea of power as it pertains to sex is the only type of power that girls are allowed, right? Girls have no power until we start talking about sex. And then everyone thinks that they have suddenly, magically, they have all the power, right? If this were true, because this strikes me as inherently untrue, if this were true and heterosexual sex could actually make social change, women would have taken over all of this long ago, right? We wouldn't be putting up with some of the stuff that we put up with. So it strikes me as inherently untrue, right? The other thing is that when girls are taught in these ways that sex equals power, they are also taught that the only time they can actually say no, in fact should say no, is when it involves sex. This is a form of personal power that is not rooted in the individual girl, rather it's rooted in the social expectations of society. So how do we deal with this? Well, comprehensive sex education is how we do this. When girls are educated with accurate, comprehensive sex education, research indicates to us that they take personal power. They're more likely to say no to unwanted sexual encounters. They're less likely to have sexually transmitted diseases. They are more likely to avoid unwanted pregnancies, right? This is because the information provides power. So, how do you deal with this, right? The first thing to do is, when your child asks, where do babies come from? Tell them. Say it. Tell them in appropriate language that is developmentally appropriate for the child at the age that they ask you. Do it in a calm demeanor. Please don't go, oh my God, where'd you hear that information? Where'd you hear that word? Please don't do that. Accurate information and use appropriate language. She has a vagina, not a hoo-ha, which sounds like something you do at a rodeo anyway. Okay, so if we want to empower girls, they must have comprehensive sex education. Now, let's talk about race. Race is an obvious feature of my life, right? So my husband and I, when we had our daughter, this is our daughter Addison, we talked about ways in which we would empower her. Because race is a constant feature in our lives, because it is subtle, but often sledgehammer-like. We had to devise a strategy for dealing with empowerment for our girl for some of the intersections that we knew that she was going to encounter in her life. So in doing this, in constructing a plan as to how we were going to empower her, we went to the research of Drs. Mamie and Kenneth Clark. Their research was known as the Black Doll, White Doll studies, and they started in 1940. Their research found that there was exposed, internalized racism and the negative effects of segregation for African American children. Their research exposed internalized racism and the negative effects of segregation for African American children. So the research was conducted in 1940s and through the 1950s. In their research, children ages 3 to 7, African American children ages 3 to 7, were given four dolls, two white and two African American. And they were asked which doll was their preference. They also were asked to assign attributes to each one of the dolls. In doing so, in every iteration of the study, it was found that most of the children preferred the white doll and assigned it positive attributes. They also assigned negative attributes to the African American doll. Okay? Now, you would think that since the research was conducted in the 1940s and 1950s, that it's not a modern feature of life. That given the progress that is perceived to have been made in terms of race in the United States, that these don't apply. Except when it was repeated in 2005, 2009, and 2010, the same results held. So we had to devise a strategy for dealing with this. And what we decided was that we were going to, while her identity was being developed, we were going to provide her with dolls, books, and music that reflected positivity in Blackness, right? Lauryn Hill, right? Books that had strong female protagonists who were Black and or brown. This on the left side over here, well, no, I guess it's your left, my right. That is God, Mrs. God, Bruce, who is God's secretary, and Shaniqua, the angel in charge of everybody's business. Okay. So what we did was we presented her with these positive images until she got to a point where she really internalized these positive messages. So one year when she was about 7 years old, we were in one of our favorite toy stores, and she perused for a little while, and then she brought to me this blonde-haired, blue-eyed doll. And she said, "Mama, I want this one." And I quelled my panic because it was rising. I quelled my panic and I said, "Oh, why do you want this doll?" And she said, "Because she looks like Brid." This is Addison and Brid. Brid is her oldest friend. So when she chose the doll, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed doll, she was not choosing a white doll because it was prettier or smarter or better or good. She chose that doll because it reminded her of someone who was special to her. Okay? But this is not a story about racial harmony. This is a story about empowering a girl by teaching her the oppressions that exist in society and allowing her to reject those images, those oppressions, and to form her own identity in a safe space, to form her identity in a place that would allow her to be who it is that she wants to be, what it is that she wants to be. So I've talked to you today about media. I've talked about sex education, made you a little uncomfortable. And I have talked to you about race. Now, each one of these could be their own talk. Each one of these probably has been its own talk. But to look at the life of a girl and to think about empowering a girl in that life, you have to think intersectionally, because to look at one concept, to look at one factor, to look at one experience is like looking at one bar of a cage. It does not give you totality. And empowerment is not an individual sport. If we want our girls to be empowered, if we want them to be empowered, we must teach them the ways in which society seeks to make them weak. And by doing so, we can allow girls to be who they are in a very safe space. The best place to do this is at home. So, if you want your girls to be strong, if you want to see social change as a result of the empowerment of girls, teach them to internalize, I am deliberate and afraid of nothing. Step back and watch the rising tide. Thank you.